It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Hillary Harms Becchetti, JD. Her first job was in a dental office. Both of her parents were dentists, and she grew up filing, sterilizing, mowing the lawn, and answering phones at her parents' practice in the Twin Cities metro area of Minneapolis, St. Paul. Almost every family vacation was wherever the ADA conference happened to be that year, and she spent her entire life surrounded by dentists. After helping her parents with their transition, Hillary founded Pine Lake Dental Law and Transitions in order to help other dentists through the transition process, among other legal struggles they may face, including employment and business law issues, and reviewing and drafting associate contracts. Pine Lake is now one of the fastest growing dental-specific law and transition firms in the Midwest, participating in around 20 to 25 transactions per year in the Minnesota area alone. Hillary has spoken at dental conferences around the country, presented for podcasts and webinars, and has written and contributed to several articles in dental magazines across the country, including Northwest Dentistry and Dental Entrepreneur Women. And we're hoping someday for Dental Town Magazine, hint, hint, Hillary. Hillary is a licensed attorney serving the states of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and South Dakota. Pine Lake is a dental law and transitions firm dedicated to guiding dentists from dental school graduation through retirement. Her practice focuses on dental practice transitions, associate contracts, estate planning, ongoing business needs, and conflict management. Just like her clients, we are all a small professional business. Her team knows firsthand what it's like to buy, sell, and run a practice. We take that expertise and knowledge to help her clients. And the reason I asked her to be on the show and not the other way around is because, Hillary, the problem is very clear. I don't know if you've heard, but there's this virus going around. And the low man on the totem pole is the young associate graduate, because when pre-corona, when things are good, I'm like too busy, I hired that extra associate to do the overflow. That overflow is gone. And so now they're coming out of school and demand. So we know, the facts are brutal. We know they just published today the United States infection fatality rate for COVID-19. They're putting it just under 1%. So about 0.86% of everyone that gets the virus dies. And that's enough to make everyone scared. And my gosh, it looks like we're 5 months into a 2-year pandemic. So these kids, so we know 40 million Americans lost their job. We know their job had dental insurance, and the dental insurance was the largest driver to get that person to the dental office. So if 40 million Americans lost their job, figure what, at least 30 out of 40 million had dental benefits. So the demand has got to adjust downwards. I've seen some reports that pre-corona, 81% of US adults had a job, and now it's below 50. So when 3 out of 10 people lost their job, I'm not hiring an associate. So the reason I wanted you to be on this show is I've been grinding this beef for 30 years against the millennials. It's kind of like grandpa against the young ones. And when I got out of school, I graduated May 11. I rented my place within a week, and I had it open for business in 130 days. And these millennials, they just walk around and say, no, I just want to get a job. Okay, well, if that works out great, come talk to me 5 years later. 5 years later, she's had 5 jobs. And I asked her, why do you have so many jobs? And dentists, they're so complicated. At the end of the day, they only like to work for themselves, because there's not 2 dentists on Dental Town that have ever agreed on anything. And so my advice was, well, if you get out of school and there's a pandemic going on, maybe they should call Hillary and just buy their own practice. Suck it up, buttercup. You're going to do it anyway. But instead of being 5 years, 5 jobs later, where you're most of the people I know that finally buy a practice, they say, you know what, when I quit my last job, I was ready to quit dentistry, and it was so bad, I finally decided that I'm just going to have to do it myself. And it's like, that's what I told you day one. So I'll shut the hell up so you can talk. But are there practices for sale? Is it insane to buy a practice in the middle of a pandemic? How are you coaching young graduates now who can't find a job?
So first up, I can completely relate to this class of dental students just because when I graduated law school, I graduated in 2007, which as we know was just the beginning of the recession. So, and one of the biggest law firms in the Twin Cities metro area shut down a month before I graduated. So I got out of law school with a boatload of debt and had no job for about 9 months. So the minute this happened, that was my first thought on students because I've been through this and it sucks. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. But to your question of, so hiring markets is literally all over the board right now. Some people are still hiring because, man, they are still seeing patients and their schedules are filled till October. They have a really loyal patient base, so they're still hiring associates. But in terms of buying a practice, so I'm the first person that will say the best way, not only to pay off your debt, but the best way to take advantage of your degree as a dentist is to own a practice. The only problem right now we're seeing is with financing. So back in your day or my parents' day or, even just 20 years ago, a dentist could just get out of law school, hang a shingle is what we call it as lawyers, but start your own practice and go from there. The problem now is that banks want to see at least a year or two out of dental school before they'll finance and do a startup or do anything like that. Now, the one exception to that is if you're going to open a practice in a place that has that doesn't have a lot of dentists. So there's a dental desert, right? So in Minnesota, it's up north. So in the Iron Range of Minnesota, they're really in need of dentists, and there are grant programs, there's loan forgiveness programs for you to go do a startup up there. So that would be like the one exception. So that would definitely be an option for people or dentists coming out of school and you can't find a job. Find a place that has very little dentists that are really in need or in an in-need area, and you might get lucky and be able to find financing. Now, in terms of buying a practice during this whole mess, yes, I still have lots of clients who are buying practices. Now, some of them, it's getting a little delayed because they want to see numbers upon reopening. The banks want to see numbers upon reopening. So most things are kind of getting pushed back until, late August, September, October, maybe even end of year, but they are still wanting to buy practices. And to your point, I have a lot of clients, new clients now that were associates and they got let go, or their hours got cut, or they're not sure if they're able to come back. So now they're like, well, hey, I'm going to buy a practice now. And then it's the opposite way too, where there's a lot of sellers that are basically like, oh, I'm done. Like, you know what? I've wanted to retire for a long time. This was sort of the catalyst that's pushing me out the door. So there is definitely going to be a lot of practices on the market. And I think it's a good opportunity, especially if you have at least a year under your belt. Now is the time to buy a practice because people want to sell their practice. They're motivated to sell their practice. And pricing, it's that still is up in the air a little bit in terms of valuations, just because it really depends on how things reopen, and what the numbers are going to be once you reopen. But it's it'll definitely be an interesting ride. But yes, it's always a good time to buy a practice. I mean, it's totally worth it, I think. So it just depends on the practice, depends on where you're at, and your local where you are locally too, because some states aren't open yet. So yeah.
So you said so many profoundly succinct things. I was actually taking notes. What part of being a grandpa, when your 4 kids turn into 6 grandkids, you turn into that crotchety old fart. Everything was so much better. I mean, it was the music, especially in the 70s. I mean, they haven't even written a song since the year 2000. But back in the day, when everything was good, we didn't have banks financing practice. The owner carried, and it was a better system. I've seen both worlds. When the owner carried, and you came and worked for me, and I'm like, well, I wouldn't let you work on me. I wouldn't let you work on my kids, so I'm not selling you my practice. And they're carrying the paper. But when you finance it through some big bank in New York City, you don't care if Mangala buys your practice. You're just going to take the money and run sometimes. And so what you said, I want you to come back to, you said, find a dental desert. So I want to come back to, do demographics matter? But why wouldn't you just find a seller in a dental desert with good deals. But and this is another thing that I don't want to bring up politics because I don't like talking about tax dollars around. But I did learn something from Trump's book that I made my little boys read when they were little, The Art of the Deal. And it was the major point takeaway for me in The Art of the Deal, and that is the price doesn't matter. It's always the terms. For instance, I would buy your house for $1 billion if the terms were $1 a month for 1 billion months, because I could rent out your house for $1,000 a month and I only had one. So I'd have a $999 free cash flow. So if I was from the graduating dental school class of COVID 2020, I wouldn't really care about the price of the practice because the banks aren't loaning. What I'd care about is, hey, doc, would you mentor me for 5 years? You're selling it for $700. Hell, I'll pay $750 or $800 if you carry the paper. Can we have a small down payment? You carry it for 5 to 7 years. And what I liked about that is when the owner carried and someone came in and something went south and they're all mad and they're going to sue you and you're going to call Hillary and she's going to go put a tire lock on their cars and liens on their house. The old man would just call the patient that he knew for 30 years, usually meet the patient down at the office, fix everything up in 15 minutes, and it was all good. I don't see the relationships when you're dealing with a bank in San Fran or New York City. So do you ever see owner carries anymore? Or was that die in the pre-pandemic and will it maybe come back to life now?
I mean, it depends. So there's a lot of pros and cons, and some of them you mentioned in terms of, is the seller going to stay? So it depends on if the seller is going to stay on. So if they're going to stay on for a few years, which is very, very common and something that I really like to see, because then they can mentor, they can, I always put language in my agreements about rework, they come in and do the rework. And they do take an interest in how they want to see you succeed. They want to see you move on. Even then, I mean, you don't see seller carries as often if it's a sole proprietor or a sole practitioner. You might see that if you're buying somebody out of a partnership. So then you do more of a deferred comp situation. And so it's nice in that you don't have to get a bank involved. That's awesome. That's the number one reason why you do it. But the cons of that is that sometimes if the seller is carrying the loan, a lot of times then they sometimes feel like they're still the owner, and there's still a lot of that kind of back and forth of, well, you haven't paid me off yet, so I'm still kind of the owner. I still want to make a lot of decisions. And so sometimes, they can butt heads, which I've seen in the past. And then also interest rates too. If you're able to do a seller carry and you're able to get amazing interest rates, which the banks are offering right now, I think they're down to like in the 3s. Then it might be worth it too. I mean, if they're able to get down and they're able to compete with the interest rates of the bank, I think that would also be a good way to go. The other con too is that, which this whole situation just proved to us, is that, when you can't make your bank payments, a lot of times, the banks kind of stepped up to some degree and allowed deferment. And there's a lot more sort of legal, underlying legal issues or legal protections when you have a bank have your financing rather than a person. So for instance, if you had a seller carry and you closed on your practice on February 15th of 2020 and March 16th you shut down, it would be up to that person to allow you to defer payment. Now, would they do it? You would hope they would, but there's you're relying on that one person's sort of goodwill. So there's really great pros and cons, and it totally depends on your situation and kind of what you're in right now. Sometimes that's a great idea, sometimes maybe not. So that's why I'm a huge believer, and I tell my clients all the time, look at all your options, contact all the banks, talk to the seller, and then that way you can make an informed decision at that point in time. So yeah, still an option.
I like that. I read this entire book on decision making, and I can sum up the whole book in 1 minute. You shouldn't read it, but it was very scientific. And the square was your decision. I want to buy a practice. The triangle was your finished decision. You bought this practice. But all the research shows that all the errors in decision making was simply that you didn't fill out all your circles. So you went and looked at a house, it was great, the right price, you bought it, but then the scientists come back in and said you could have bought better house, you know, you didn't.
Right.
So it's all about just not figuring out the circles. I got so many questions for you. With interest rates down to 3% and you're selling 25 practices a year, are you revisiting refinancing those yet? Or what would you say pre-corona average interest rate was now? And what do you think you could get it refinanced? And what kind of material impact would that be on a payment?
Oh, big. So, and I can't do the math in my head right now, but I could tell you that pre-corona, they were sitting in the 4s, sometimes 5s. Actually just more pre-2020. They started to go down. I started seeing interest rates as low as, 4.38, 3.9. But now with refinancing, oh gosh, they're like in the mid 3s. I've even seen low 3s. I've seen high 2s. So if you bought a practice, 2-3 years ago and your interest rate was 5 or 6, and this is depends on the bank too. Smaller banks usually have higher interest rates, bigger banks have lower ones. But if you had, an interest rate in the 5s or 6s, and now they're sitting at, 3, that makes and you have a $1 million practice or $1 million loan, that's a huge difference over the life of the loan. You can save, I've had clients who have saved about $50,000 over the life of the loan just by refinancing. So I know there's a lot of banks out there right now that have really excellent refinancing for practices. I think Lendever is one of them. Some of the larger banks too are doing some refinancing. So definitely talk to your bank about doing refinancing for your practice and your house too. We just did, on a personal note, we're going to refinance our house for, I think, 2.65. So yeah, interest rates.
I did it even better. I just gave my house away during the divorce. It's just,
oh, hey,
you don't have to refinance it or anything. You just you can leave. So what, Hillary, is there an interest rate spread that makes you think go refinance it? Is it a full point? Is it a 1.5? Any generic advice where if you bought your practice at 5%, or what rate it would have to drop before you said, yeah, you got to refinance it?
Well, I think you just have to you have to do the math. I mean, it depends on how much you bought the practice for, how much you have left, how long ago you did it, what your interest rate is. But if it's safe, and then you can see how much you save. You can literally go online, do a amortization calculator and figure out how much you would owe, how much you owe now, how much you would owe if it was at this percentage rate. And you can literally see the difference of how much interest you pay over the life of the loan. And if it's anywhere, and then if they have any kind of fees or refinancing fees, then you literally just do the math and say, okay, well, I'm going to save $100,000 a life of my loan and pay maybe $1,000 in refinancing fees. Holy moly, that's totally worth it. And not only that, but you can also maybe lower your payments too. So the nice thing about that is, with everything kind of reopening, cash is going to be tight for the next few months. That might be another big thing too, is just lowering your payments.
If my homie has a question on refinancing an existing loan, would you have him email you, or do you have a bank, or what resource? Where would you tell him to go?
So honestly, I work a lot with Lendever, which is kind of a new player in the practice financing.
Lendever?
Lendever, Lendeavor. They're an internet bank. They're across the country, and they are doing refinance like crazy right now. That's all, because they're not doing PPP loans, so they're basically completely focused on refinancing and practice finance too. But if you also have a local banker that you work with that you really are comfortable with, that's the way to go too. Ask them and say, hey, listen, I want to refinance my practice loan. What are your rates? And shop around. Every sort of territory, Midwest, East, West, they all have, their practice finance bankers. So ask your accountant, maybe like, who are all the practice finance people? Who are the dental bankers? And then get a list of names and just start calling and seeing what they can offer you. But I do know Lendever because I've actually had a few clients that use them. So that's the one name I could definitely throw out. So
I want you to, I see a lot of mental errors in separating before Corona, BC, AC, after Corona,
yeah.
People they just default back to the world they knew. And especially older people. I only knew this world for 57 years, so it's hard to snap out and the deal. So in this new world where everything is different, did you see more practices list where older dentists, because I see on Dental Town where I notice it a lot. If you're a dentist over 60, that 60 kind of is the cutoff. You know, they're looking at a 2-year pandemic and they were planning on retiring at 65, and they're just like, you know what, they don't want to figure out all this shit, and they're just done. But seriously, 59, 58, 57, 55, they're gonna kind of. But did you see an increase in listings past Corona, or a decrease in listings to sell?
Oh, increase for sure. This definitely, it was a catalyst. So, you know, my parents are a perfect example of this. They did not want, they would basically practice dentistry until their arms fell off. I mean, it's really hard for a lot of dentists, and I can, you know, my parents included, to kind of make that jump to retirement. Because you really can do this. As long as you're feeling okay, you can do this profession. I've known dentists who are like in their 80s. You know, you could do this for quite a while. I
knew a 92 and a 91 in LA who survived the largest concentration camp in Poland. I went there. He survived Auschwitz, still practicing in LA at 91. And then George Rui Sr. practiced in St. Joe, Missouri till he was 92.
Yeah, exactly. So
you can do it.
And it sort of that catalyst, like, all right, you know what? This was a sign, you know, I'm done. I don't want to change what I'm doing, because it is, everyone's gonna have to change how they do things going forward in terms of production and how they see patients and all these new guidelines and regulations that are in there. So yes, a lot of them are just like done. I've heard stories of people that are literally just walking away. Like they're calling, you know, the other dentist in town, and they're saying, you know what, I'm done. Like, do you want to buy my patient records? Otherwise, I'm just gonna close down, because I just, you know, don't want to deal with it. So this has definitely been a catalyst for not just sellers, but also buyers too, with associates losing their jobs. So I think we're gonna see a lot of practice.
So Hillary, I noticed the governor of the Florida Dental Association executive director, Drew, and they're calling on the Florida governor to say, we want a waiver on graduation boards this year. I mean, how are you going to have board exams? And the board exams were always a racket. I mean, government is basically just the mob. It was just another way for dentists to shake down. It was just another way. I mean, dental school teachers, I mean, when I was little, they were like the leaders of the profession. Now they're just like the thieves of the profession. I mean, they steal $100,000 a year from a child, and then after 4 years, he can't get an exam unless he goes and takes some government board, because all the faculty has a job, so they're all in on the shakedown, and they're all going to make $1,000 on the weekend. And the Florida Dental Association has stood up to the governor and said, we want a waiver on these on these graduation classes, and the tests weren't uniform. I mean, if we were all on a mannequin, it'd be a test. But when my guy doesn't show up and your guy shows up drunk, and then Mary here has Sister Mary Aloysia from the nunnery coming in being a perfect patient. I mean, it's not a standardized test. The whole thing is a joke. And then these private dental schools have the nerve to say, we're having a fundraiser. Would you like to do, because we're a nonprofit. Yeah, we just have 100 people on the faculty that make $150,000, $200,000 a year, work 3 days a week, and are always out of town. But will you donate money? So I think post-COVID, I think a lot of these dental associations better start acting like Jimmy Hoffa and the Teamsters and helping their bros, or they're not going to get the donations anymore. But is board exams going to be difficult? I mean, if she's coming out of school, she's in Minnesota. Did she already pass the boards? Is that still a deal? Any feedback on board exams during the middle of a pandemic?
You know, I've been hearing things all across the board. I know here, they still don't really know how they're going to do it. And again, I know they've been kind of pushed back, and there's all these different ideas going around, but it sounds as if they don't know how to do it.
So why don't you, a lawyer, tell them if they don't just cancel it, you'll sue them. I'll get you all the Minnesota townies to back you on that. I mean, Because when you're my age, I don't care about 57-year-old dentists. I mean, I'm mostly worried about the kids, and they're
Oh
just
yeah.
out of dental kindergarten, and they were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed last Christmas, and now they're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And I think the whole state board thing, just across the board, just cancel it for COVID. It was non-standardized. It was another racket for dental schools to shake down young kids who were going to have to pay for this dental board on their credit card over the next 20 years. And it's just they can't show me any evidence of how this test protected the public, how this test showed that these schools couldn't educate anyone. I mean, they don't have any data that shows anything. All they can show me is transactions of how much money they stole from kids to give them this piece of paper. You know, just classic racket. But anyway, so another question: do demographics matter? You've been doing this for a decade or more. By the way, you know where Lake Elmo is?
Of course I do. Yes.
So that's where my oldest sister, she's a Carmelite nun. That's her monastery. So whenever I go visit her, I would fly to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I had to do something for 4 hours and 1 minute to make it a business expense. So I'd either go bother Pete Frechette at Patterson back in the day when he was still alive, or Sumitra at 3M, and just love Lake Elmo. But do demographics matter? Are kids doing a lot better? To talk demographics, and do they matter?
Well, and first of all, if you ever want to do business expense, we can grab lunch downtown sometime, and that can be your
4 hours and 1 minute. You'll be so wasted. You'll have
sure. Happy hour, yeah. So yes, it absolutely matters. You know, I can just give local examples. You know, what you really want to do, not just in doing the startup, it is especially important to do demographics and to find the right practice for you. And to find somewhere, I would say the number one thing that makes a practice successful, besides obviously the dentists themselves, but in terms of demographics, is competition. If you're gonna, you know, a lot of people in Minnesota, they want to be downtown, or they want to be in, you know, Edina, which is like, you know, fancier little suburb, where there's about, you know, one dentist for every 100 patients, you know? And so, but that's where they want to be, because they feel like, well, it's a fancy area. I feel like I can, you know, maybe a better patient base, but that's what everyone else is thinking too. So you are going to start a practice or even buy a practice in an area where you have just a ton of competition. You're going to have to spend way more in, advertising, marketing. If you're in, you know, like a downtown type area, you're going to spend more on rent, on staff costs. Your overhead is going to be way higher. And so I always tell people, if you can do it, go in areas that are maybe out farther, out, you know, outskirts of the metro area, or up north, or somewhere where there really isn't a lot of dentists. So basically you can walk in and you'll be the only dentist within a 60-mile radius, and you get all the patients, you know? So, and your overhead will probably be less because you're paying less in rent. Your staff costs will probably be less. So some of the best practices I've ever seen have been out, you know, up north, or, you know, third ring somewhere out there. So I think demographics are hugely important.
The only time I see someone make that obvious smart decision is when they already have their family life in a box. Like, some young Mormon guy, he's already married, they already got a kid, she's already pregnant, they got the package, they got the whole family in a lunch pail, and they're ready to go out. But if they're single, like, I know single girls, and this could sound sexist because it's a difference between girls and boys, but I have a lot of girls that tell me they want to be an associate because their incubator time bomb's going off, and if they meet their gamete producer and he's a dentist on the other side of the country, they're going to pack up and leave, because they're saying, you know, my incubator, I'm going to turn my incubator off at age 40, and I'm 32, and I don't want to lock myself down with a practice. Do you see that? Do you see mostly married people going out in the middle of nowhere, and then people who are still looking for mates to stay in Minneapolis, St. Paul? I don't even know why you'd stay in Minneapolis.
No, honestly, it's pretty even. Actually, and if I find someone that is single, and So full disclosure, most of my clients are women. So, you know,
What way is that?
Huh?
What way is that, do you think?
Probably because I'm a woman.
Is it a tribal thing? Do you notice?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I'm one of the few women that really do this too. You know, in terms of being a dental professional, most dental professionals, with the exception for practice consultants, are men. So I feel like I can relate, and I'm a mom, so you know, I've been in that position of, oh man, I'm gonna have kids pretty soon. What do I do? But I can tell you for one thing, just to address that, I have had multiple women clients who have actually wanted to buy a practice before they had kids, because then it gave them that flexibility of, you know, being on maternity leave, but then also being able to rearrange their schedule around kids. So it's really, I feel like practice ownership really does give women more options, actually. And my mom was a practice owner, and she was at every single sporting event because she would just rearrange her schedule to make sure that she was at.
Sleeping with her boss though?
She totally was, yeah. Well, her partner, actually, my dad, yeah.
So I mean, I think we all agree, all older women agree that, because it seems to be a very common question with girls in dental kindergarten school. The biology says you want to be a better mom. Society says, you know, you want to be a good dentist, and they prioritize, I want to be known. I'd rather be on my deathbed saying I was a better grandpa than a better dad. I mean, yeah, it's the line. But it seems like the best mom would own her own business and not have to ask permission if they can leave at 3 to go see their daughter's recital, you know, and they have a graduation ceremony.
And, yeah, no, that's just it. Like, you don't have to, you can be your own, I mean, you're your own boss because you can do your own thing. And that's exactly what I do. My work schedule is literally around the school schedule. So I drop my kids off, I start working, and then pick my kids up off the bus. I'm done. Yeah.
How many do you have? How many kids and how old?
3. So I have 7, and 4.
7, 2 twins?
They're twins, yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Is that one in the family?
No, it was a total fluke. Total shock. Yeah.
Wow, that is wild. That is wild. Identical twins, boy or girl?
Girl, all girls.
All girls, 3 girls. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I'm in trouble.
Okay, so let's go that, because any rational person would say, man, you're too busy to own your own business. Wouldn't you rather just go clock in, do your 8 to 5 thing and go home? Because think of how many hats you have to, I mean, think of all the hats you wear. So that young girl who's 20, she's thinking, no, I mean, it'd just be easier to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 if you had 3 kids.
Yeah. But no, I mean, that's just it. I mean, so I've done both. I mean, I worked for the state for a very long time, for a little while, early in my career. And, you know, you had to be there from 8:30 to 4:30 every single day. And then if you had to take time off, you had to take time off. Whereas as a business owner, I literally can completely rearrange my schedule so I can be at field trips. I can go up to my parents' cabin for a week and work up there, and, you know, have my kids there. So it really does give you the flexibility. Now, dentistry is a little different, obviously, because you actually have to be there. You can't work from home. But, you know, my mom, like, totally would rearrange her schedule around our schedules. So it really, I think it affords you a lot more flexibility than work.
I'm going to get my brain around your amazing mind. I mean, you were, I mean, seriously, your resume is, I mean, it's amazing. You work for the European Parliament in Brussels, Belgium.
Yeah.
Is that a typo or is that for real?
No, it was an internship in college for a whole semester. I was in Brussels when U.S. declared war on Iraq, no less. So it was a very interesting time, spring of 2003. Yeah, it was wild. It was so much fun, though.
2003?
Yeah.
Didn't that seem like an eternity ago? Didn't the pandemic make time just warp? I mean, you think of 2003 as like we're, you know, the Flintstones, and, you know, I mean, just crazy. and now they're saying this coronavirus pandemic is tearing the EU apart, you know, because you had the UK break off, and now you have pandemonium. Do you think this is going to put downward pressure? I know it's a dental podcast and I should shut up.
I know.
Do you think that this pandemic is going to put downward pressures on the EU? And
I think so. I don't think the main members, so like Germany and France and Brussels, I think they're going to stay tight. But you know, it's one of those things where they've faced hardships before. You know, the recession was a huge pressure. I mean, that put a ton of pressure on the EU because there were countries that were, I mean, just, you know, doing horribly, and then other countries that were essentially bailing those other countries out. So that put a lot of pressure on it. So I feel like it'll survive. It'll be just fine. But yeah, this will definitely be a test for them. And I think it's a great institution. I had so much fun working for them, and I learned a lot, obviously, about international politics, and especially, you know, again, during when U.S. declared war in Iraq. So that, you know, we saw a lot of protests. There's lots of debates about that, but you know, it's one of those things where I think they'll survive, but it'll be just another test for them, you know. So,
you know, you got to listen to the birdie on your shoulder. And, you know, they say like language is only like 7%. It's body language, it's emotion.
yeah.
But I've lectured 1,000 times, 50 countries, and all these ups and downs. And you just feel it when someone comes up to you and you just sense aggressive, like, are you American? You just reflex. Well, yeah. I'm from Canada, but why do you ask? And they're like, oh, sorry. And one of my other speaker friends, he went and bought a big leather black jacket with a big red maple leaf on there. And he goes, yeah, it's so much easier. And I got a free meal. I was with my oldest son, Eric. I was in Italy, and we were eating, no, it was in Venice, Italy. And we were having this great meal, and it was awesome. And you're in Venice, and almost completely done. And some guy at the bar turns to us and starts rattling off the mouth because he just knew we're American. So the bartender gets up, throws him out. It's a big scene. And then he gives us a free dinner. And I thought, man, that was awesome. You have a great dinner. You're hammered. And before you get the bill for $300, you take some guy's shit for a minute and you get a free meal. I was like, I want to sign up for that program every day. But my gosh. So you said the banks want 1 or 2 years. So she's in, she just graduated in, I mean, this is May 19th. She just graduated. Is she wasting her time calling you? Should she just go look for an associate? And because she's not going to get financing. And then if she goes and gets a job, you know, it's kind of like a lion. When a lion's going to get you, they look for the weakest one, the one with a limp, a broken leg, and they separate it from the herd, and then they get it. And I noticed that, like on a dental convention, when you're walking down the floor, the salesperson always tries to pull you off the deal one-on-one to tell you something that they would never post on dentaltown.com because it's full of, you know, but on that one-on-one thing, on that one-on-one thing, they tell them, we're big Heartland, we're big Fontana, Aspen, we're the big boys. Here's our boilerplate contract, sign as is or take a hike.
Yeah.
Are they bluffing? I mean, because you can't see their cards. I mean, when they say sign as is or take a hike, should they call you, or is it true?
Yes. So I will tell you, I've seen, I think, almost all the major corporate dental contracts now, and everyone's different. But yeah, you definitely need to call me to look that over, because sometimes there is some wiggle room on some of this stuff.
How do they call it? And what do they call you at? Are you going to give your number?
Oh yeah. Yep.
What is it?
It's 651-428-2253, or just go on pinelakelaw.com. That has all my contact info.
Okay, the website is what?
pinelakelaw.com.
pinelakelaw.com.
Yep.
pinelakelaw.com. And the phone number was what?
651-428-2253.
Okay. And so she's trying to get a job, Heartland, Aspen, Pacific Dental, Bright Smile, and so you're saying they're not boilerplate contracts. There's wiggle room.
They're definitely boilerplate contracts in a sense, but at the same time, you have to understand that every state is completely different when it comes to employment law and non-competes. So they have to conform to your state laws. And every single DSO or corporate that I've dealt with, all their lawyers are out of like Chicago or Texas or somewhere else. And a lot of times they don't realize that, hey, this non-compete language is completely unenforceable in Minnesota, or this is like completely illegal in Minnesota. So, and sometimes they won't take your advice and they're just like, nope, whatever, this is our contract. But the majority of the time they will listen to you and they will at least make some changes that will fix some of that as well. And not only that, but some of them, especially the newer ones that are coming out that have never dealt with Minnesota, they just don't realize that it's different here or in Wisconsin or South Dakota or anywhere else. So having someone, any attorney, honestly, that's a local attorney in your state that can look that over is you really need that. Not only that, but they can tell you what's normal. You know, a lot of times you're getting paid, you got offered 25% production, adjusted gross production, and they're like, oh, is that normal? It's like, well, no, it's not in this area, or you know what I mean? Or maybe it is normal. So just kind of having someone let you know that something's normal or realistic in your areas is a good sign. And I know a lot of—
I didn't even know I thought everything was illegal in the land of Prince Rogers Nelson. I didn't know you guys were into laws. That guy partied like it was 1999.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just a few laws. Yeah.
And in your experience, I always tell when I go into the dental school, I always tell them that, the reason everybody's into propaganda is because it works. I mean, you tell people stories and they believe them. So the dental schools have been bombarded by DSOs that come in and throw pizza parties and tell them the sky's falling. Howard graduated in the good old days when every pharmacist owned his own practice, and now every pharmacist works for Walgreens and Hinky Dinky, or Walgreens and CVS or CVC.
CVS, yeah.
CVS with the 4.5 mile long receipts. What is wrong with those people? Why do you need toilet paper? Just go buy a candy bar at CVS, and you should have enough wiping paper for at least 3 days. But do you think, if I had Rick Workman, the CEO of Heartland Dental, on here right now, he would tell you in 20 years, half the dentists would be working for a DSO. And, so they're in the dental schools and they're all like, well, we're all going to be working at Walgreens and CVS. Do you believe that or not?
No, not at all.
Do you not believe it because you emotionally don't want to believe it, or have you seen material reasons? I mean, is this your wish list, or is this something you see observations that back this?
Observation. Yep. So I will tell you that from what I know of DSOs and my research and everything, and I'll probably get into trouble for saying this, but I don't really care. They have a horrible retention rate. I mean, dentists just don't want to work there because they're all about profits and all about production, because they need to have as much production as possible in order to make profits. And so I have heard horror stories from some clients about working at DSOs. Now, keep in mind, some people like it. So, I mean, there's always that small percentage of dentists that like it and they don't really care.
What percent do you think like it versus don't like it?
I'd say about 10 like it.
Like it? Yeah.
And I will, because I can tell you just from my own personal observations that most dentists, and they tell me this all the time, I didn't become a dentist to work for somebody else. I became a dentist because I wanted to work for myself. And just looking at the earning potential between someone that stays an associate for their entire career and be a practice owner is absolutely insane. I mean, you make significantly more money as a practice owner over your lifetime than you ever would as an associate. And so just looking at those benefits, it's such a clear choice if that's what you want to do. Now, some people just don't have the personality for it, or they just don't have, the drive for it. But most dentists that I know and that I've talked to, and I've been to the dental schools, they all want to be practice owners someday. And now keep in mind, yes, the DSO corporate model, they're definitely out there and they're buying up practices, but I've also seen them sell.
And
So
just for you kids who are naive and green and don't believe in reality, we're in the middle of a pandemic, right? And there is published research showing that mortality rate in for-profit nursing homes is 33% higher than in nonprofit nursing homes. When it's all about the money, people die. So if you were in a DSO nursing home, your grandma's got a 1/3 greater chance of dying. And the reason I have never sold my practice to a DSO is because my 4 rotten boys turned into 6 amazing grandchildren. Oh, by the way, Hillary, that's why you never kill your daughters, because they're going to make up for everything they did wrong by delivering you a grandbaby someday, and you'll absolve them from all their sins. But I don't want my 6 grandkids to go into a dental office that being ran by some MBA saying, oh, well, she has 5 fillings. Those are all crown opportunities. Why don't you upgrade one into a crown? And you're like, okay, well, when you crown a tooth, in 5 years, 1/3 of them need a root canal. When you do a root canal in 5 years, 10% of them are in a trash can. And I mean, you know, the best dentistry in the world is a dentistry that's never done. You don't want to touch the tooth. I want my grandkids to see the hygienist every 6 months and not even recognize who the dentist is. But anyway, we're getting off on a tangent. But I want you to opine on this. As a lawyer, why would you think the death rates in for-profit nursing homes would be 1/3 higher than nonprofit?
Well, I don't know if I can comment as a lawyer, because I guess I don't really know the legal piece of it, but I can say that I can definitely guess it's because they're not taking, there may be some, they're not taking the same precautions as maybe a nonprofit, or in the case of dentistry, you know, like a private practice. You know, you're gonna take into account all those CDC guidelines. Most private practices are very patient centric, and they also very much care about their staff. So they are doing everything possible to make sure that they are following the guidelines. They're making sure that the infection rate is close to 0 as possible. They're also changing how they do production, because they can't just pop in and see patient. So their production is going to suffer for the next few months, because they are doing what they're supposed to be doing and trying to, you know, stop the spread. So I can't see, it would be really hard for me to see a business that's based on, you know, do as much production as possible in a scenario where you have to slow things down. I can't see that being a you know, something for like, I can't think of the word, but like, you know, it won't last very long. You know what I mean? Because you have to make profits in order to keep this business going. And in order to get profits, you have to do production. And if you have to slow production down, what's that going to do to your bottom line, your profits? So I just can't, it's not sustainable is what I was trying to say.
So, yeah. So if you earned $100 last year, where did that $100 come from? Was it all on, how do you make your money?
Just like any lawyer. So usually charged by the hour.
Yep. Usually charged by the hour. And how much, lecturing for this August 4th will be my 30-year anniversary of lecturing.
Nice.
Crazy. But you always ask, does anybody have any questions before the break? No one has a question. Then you do a break, and that's where everybody runs out, because they all are shy and they all have a question, and all the questions are exactly the same. And when those fees is your revenue mostly on practice transitions? Is that why people are mostly calling you? Is that 100% of your business?
It's not 100%. It's probably about, well, in the last 2 months, it's been a lot lower, just because more people have questions about employee issues and business law stuff. But yes, in normal times, about, I would say 80 to 85% of my business is transitions. But the rest of it is associate contracts, business law issues, employment issues, all that good stuff.
If you were on a good podcast, you already would have got the questions beforehand, but you know, my brain don't work that way. But what's the low hanging fruit? Like, you go to McDonald's, you get a Big Mac fry and a Coke. You go to my dental office, you're going to get a cleaning exam and a filling. What are the top 3 reasons they're calling you about a transition? What do they not know? You could, what do they not understand, or you know, or
Yeah. So it depends on what we're doing. So usually the majority of my clients are buyers. So they're basically just calling me to draft all the legal documents, because a transition is it's a complicated legal process. You know, you have purchase agreements, leases, letters of intent. So basically they call me to walk them through that process,
So
negotiate on.
they've already found a practice they want to buy. So when they call you, they've already got a practice in mind.
Yep. Yep.
And have you seen that Dental Town has free classified ads?
I saw that.
And it has about 56. In fact, we put the stats on there. It was kind of a neat program deal. But if you go to classifieds, it says the value. It says the value. Let me see. Let's see if I got it. Come on. The value. Oh my gosh, I'm not smart enough to find it. But anyway, I think it was all class.
Yeah, it'll usually say production.
The total number of all classified. Anyway, but it's like hundreds of millions of dollars. So usually, Hillary, you're saying they've already see a practice they want to buy.
Yep.
So they see a listing. We'll just say Prince Nelson's dental office, and
Yes.
Downtown. It's all purple on the corner of Purple Street in Maine, and he wants to buy Prince Rogers Nelson office. So then he calls you first, and then or have they already talked to the guy selling? And is that a bad move? Is it kind of not a good strategy to let somebody know I really want to buy your practice? Maybe they sense that you're really motivated and you're desperate because you always wanted to buy Prince Rogers Nelson's dental office in downtown. Is that a bad move, or should they be more secretive about it and contact you as their private attorney first, or what do you?
So usually what I tell people is find the practice you want to buy first, go look at it. So do a showing like you would a house. And then just let the seller, broker, whoever is selling the practice know, hey, I'll be in contact with you. And then that's when you contact me. And then you also contact what I always call your team, your initial team for your transition. So that's your attorney, your accountant, your banker. So contact me first, then contact an accountant and a banker. And then usually I can give, or whatever attorney that you end up contacting can give you referrals to other accountants that do dental. I would definitely hire a dental specific accountant. Because then what they'll do is they'll look over all the numbers, they'll look over all the production reports and the tax returns. They'll look at the valuation to see if it's a good price.
Who's your dental accountant? Did you use one dental accountant in Minnesota, or do you use several? Or
so I work with several. There's a few in Minnesota, a few in Wisconsin. Some of them are, large, big corporate, accounting firms. Some are small. But it's really who you connect with best. And I would definitely talk to not only a few attorneys, but a few accountants, definitely a few bankers I would talk to, because you definitely want to get, kind of get that ball rolling with the financing too, because you have to see, hey, am I going to be able to finance this practice? Is it overpriced?
And I can't say this enough, but I mean, you wouldn't go. People don't say, oh, he's my doctor. He treats my teeth and my eyes and my cancer and my broken bone. I mean, you have all these specialties. And then they go pick their accountant because he goes to the same church as you do.
No, don't do that, please.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, no, I know.
And it's green, but you got to have someone that only does dentistry. I had a long talk last night. Some guy called me at 11 o'clock. I don't even know why he answered the phone. And my gosh, and his accountant, basically his accountant has given him the worst advice in the world. And you just know the guy doesn't understand the difference between accounting and agriculture. And I just can't say it enough. What percent of your accountant's clients should be a dentist? How low could it be before you still knew what the hell you were doing?
So it depends. If they do only, so I know some accountants that do only like small medical practices. So they'll do dental, chiro, optometry. But dental is definitely unique in all of those. So I would say at least, majority, if you can. I have the accountants that I work for, it's almost 100%.
Yeah.
So
the other reason you need that is because the dentist it's kind of weird being a dentist because your whole life, you know, you made A's in math, so you get A's in physics and A's, you know, you just kept being told how smart you are. And then when you look at their business numbers, they look like they're in grammar school. So most accountants, when they work for any serious industry that has competition, the numbers are bulletproof. And then here comes a dentist coming in with numbers, and you're like, do you have a head injury? You know, was it a head-on car wreck, or do you have I mean, so since your numbers are so incomplete because you have half your numbers in Dentrix, EagleSoft, and Open Dental, and then the other half of your numbers are in Quicken and Peachtree and QuickBooks Pro. So when you present, you're already schizophrenic. You have two different personalities unconnected. So you have to do dentistry full time to be able to ease out of the tea leaves. That, well, I don't have the data to show this exactly, but all my clients in this state who dropped Medicaid, their production went down this %, but their net income went up twice that %. So I know you are getting paid at half your cost, because when you quit losing money, when you quit doing a filling for $1 that costs $2, we didn't have to take $1 profit to carry it over to do this one. So your books, you know, and that's why everybody's going to Open Dental, because everybody I podcast and I've ever podcast that's building a bridge to the dentist management information system, artificial intelligence, they're only going after Open Dental because it's the only one that's open. I mean, Dentrix and EagleSoft are not open. So I do believe, I want to be an optimist, I do believe there's a day, maybe, you know, several decades away, where accounting and taxes will be automated by AI. I don't think you're going to need a monkey wearing tennis shoes to do, I mean, it's all math. I mean, it's simply math. If AI can't do a math problem, then we should just give up on it now. But we're probably at least 2 or 3 decades away from that. So since your numbers are separated into 2 halves that are not connected, you need to go to a full-time dental person. I remember when I was little, when I was 10, my dad used to give me a statement of cash flow, a balance sheet, and a statement of income, and he'd take one of the sheets away, and I had to build that sheet from the numbers on the other 2 sheets. And so and that was how you learned how they were connected, by taking away one of the 3. Yeah, so only deal with people, only do dental. What % of your business is only dental?
About 99%.
Well, you need to find that 1% and just what is that big river through Minneapolis?
Mississippi.
It's the Mississippi River?
It starts in Minnesota. Yeah.
Is that right? That's and what is your favorite Prince song besides 1999?
Oh, Red Corvette.
Red Corvette.
Red Corvette, for sure.
Corvette?
Yeah.
So what do you I want you to I can't believe an hour went by. We talked about we talked about oh, I know this is kind of a weird question, but I wanted to ask you. A lot of older dentists, they always ask me, what is life like after dentistry? So you've sold a lot of practices. So we're always thinking about the transaction between the old and the young, but what does that old guy do? I assume in Minnesota, he just goes ice fishing, right? He just builds a little hole, cuts a hole in the lake.
Cabin up north. Yeah.
What is the dentistry like?
Well, so if I use my parents as an example, my mom obviously failed at retirement because she is out speaking now and like doing books and all this other stuff. But my dad definitely took to retirement. So he goes up to the cabin a lot. That was what they pretty much did. They have a cabin, which everyone, if you know anything about people in Minnesota, we all have cabins. We all go up north on the weekends. And so, but mainly a lot of them, they just chill out, and some of them stay working for a while. So it really does depend on kind of what their passion lies. But for the most part, most of them probably go up north. They relax. They move to Florida. I've heard a few of those moving to Florida.
That actually work in Minnesota because you're already used to insects in Minnesota. So Florida would work.
Oh,
but
yeah.
my
Our mosquitoes are way For sure.
My
Yeah.
friends that retired here from Minnesota, they're from Minnesota, because Minnesota has a ton of insects around those lakes, a ton
Oh
of,
yeah. That
but
mosquito.
you can tell because a lot of them from Minnesota will say, "So did you retire down here for the weather?" And they say, "Well, I thought it was for the weather, but when I got here, there's no insects. I mean, there's scorpions and rattlesnakes and cactus, but you don't have the insects flying." I want to ask you a very difficult question, because I know there's so many nuances to it, but the $1 million question is still, they come out of school, they want to get a job for a couple of years. I mean, you got to, it's like football. At the end of the day, you got to come out of school. You got to learn how to throw a pass, catch the ball, block, and tackle. And until you've done several hundred fillings, crowns, simple endo, you need to just come out of school and do your basic tackle, block, pass. But about 2 to 3 years out, the $1 million question is, should I start my own de novo or should I buy? And is there any, do you have any rules of thumbs, any way to wrap your amazing mind around that complex dilemma?
So I'm going to give you the worst answer ever.
Really, should I stay or should I go? Should I buy or should I build?
Yeah, so it depends on where you are. If you're in an area where you could definitely do a startup, so you are like in an area where there's not a lot of competition, and you want to build a building, you want to really kind of go for it, and you have that security of someone else's income, because you're not going to make a whole lot of money those first few years. Then go for it, because then you start out lower loan, you can really build that practice the way you want to build it. But if you are in a situation where, no, I need income day one, then you're probably better off buying a practice, because then you're going to have that income from day one. Or if you want to buy a practice in a place that maybe is in downtown Minneapolis or downtown Madison or something. But it really does depend on your drive, and if you can do it in your family situation too, and how, what's your finances look like. But if you want to make money from day one, probably buying a practice. But then it does take some time to make it your own, right? So you kind of have to do that. But if you have a little bit of leeway, you have a spouse that makes, really good money, or you have, a trust fund, or, you're a little bit more financially secure, go ahead and do a startup. Startups are great. So it just does take a little research. So, yeah.
So we're past the hour. So if I ask any questions, you just say no, and cut it off the end. No one will ever see us coming. But this one's going to get a little personal. There's a lot of lovebirds in dental school. They fell in love in dental school. I don't know. Did your mom?
My parents.
Did they meet in dental school?
Well, they met in college, and then my mom followed my dad to dental school. So.
Oh, that's right. That's right. She's a stalker, right?
She totally is a stalker. Yeah.
So the question is, growing up in that type of family, if you're two little lovebirds in dental school, I know, and obviously it comes down to the exact relationship, but would you recommend those two go together and buy a practice, or would you recommend no, one on the east side of town, one on the west side of town, and we'll live downtown?
Well, it depends on if you can work with your spouse. I mean, keep in mind, you're going to be seeing them all day, every day, all night, every night. So it worked for my parents because they were pretty opposite personalities. So my mom was always kind of the tough, like, I don't want to say bad guy, but she was definitely the enforcer. And my dad was the nice, like, sweet guy that, everyone, wanted to talk to and loved. But it worked out because it just worked that way, because they were kind of the opposite, and they worked really, really well together. And then not only that, but they could pool their resources into this one practice. And then it became a family business. I mean, I worked there since I was 10 or 12. And so did my siblings. So it really became this, and their staff became my family. Like there was a few staff members that literally had been there since I was 2 and had literally watched me grow up. So it was just a cool experience growing up in that, it became like your second family essentially. So if it can work, and I've seen it happen. I mean, I know a lot of couples that work together. And then also the nice thing about that too, is you can kind of rearrange your schedule again around your family. And they could work together on that too. So, and they could fill in for each other, and, and they have your back, who better to have your back than your spouse or
well, Helen, I want the honest answer. If you had to have your tooth pulled, would you go to mom or dad?
Mom. She was gentler. She would always like pat my, you know, she'd be like, oh, honey, are you okay? Are you okay? You know, so she was always very gentle in the dental chair. So
I just want to make one comment on this discussion from having an MBA and doing dental consulting for 30 years. You know, I don't care if it's husband and wife. I don't care if the woman is a dentist and her husband's the office manager. I don't care about any of that. All I care about is there has to be an org chart. I have to know who the general is, the assistant general, the infantry. I got to know where I am. And the problem I see with relationships in the office is what my grandkids do to me every day. If I say no, they run to grandma. And there's at least there's a very high chance grandma will reverse the decision every time. So, you know, if they go ask the dentist, who's the owner, and he says, we're going right. And then he goes and asks the office manager, who's the wife, and she says, no, we're going left. The staff that's not how humans work. Humans need an org chart. And I don't care what you do at home. I don't care. I don't care about anything. I'm serving you. You're the general. Am I supposed to take that hill or retreat? Just tell me what I got to do. I'll deal with that. And every time you go in there and morale is low and turnover is high, it's because there's no org chart.
Well, it's just like parenting, right? Like as a kid, so using my parents, I knew that if I went to my dad, he'd be a lot softer on things than maybe my mom. But then I also knew that my mom was definitely in charge, you know? So I think in an office, you're absolutely right in that you need to have, or you just need to know that, like, if you make a decision, I have to stand by you. You always have to be on the same team, right? You have to be a united front too. So yeah, no, I agree.
Can I ask two more questions? Or you a lot of dentists my age, I'm 57, I'll be 58 in August. They're thinking, well, if I'm going to be selling at 65, will I get my money out if I fix up my dental office? For instance, in real estate in Phoenix, Arizona, every real estate agent will tell you that if you put $1 into putting a swimming pool in your backyard, you're not going to get that dollar back out. So just keep the dollar. Some of them think I need to, you know, so my question succinctly is, what dollar should a 55-year-old plus dentist put into a dental office that he knows he'll get it back at selling price and possibly some more coin?
So it depends on what you spend it on. If you spend it on nice new equipment, you might be able to get some of that back, because buyers nowadays do like that. You know, they want some kind of updated equipment. They don't want something to look really, you know, janky and old and breaking down. It's going to break down in 2 years. Same with making simple changes in your office interior. So if you have carpet in your clinic that's been there since the 1970s, you might want to change it, because that's really going to lower the value of your practice, and you'll actually probably get that money back. And it also depends. It also really goes towards how many buyers you end up getting. If you have a practice that looks great, it's clean, it's nice, it's been updated, you're going to have a lot more buyers coming in wanting that practice and potentially getting a bidding more than if you have, you know, I've seen this up before, like, you know, a big fish, you know, hanging on the wall, or like a deer head and, you know, wallpaper from, you know, 1962. You're not going to get as many interested buyers. So, or you're probably going to get a lot lower price because people just aren't going to be really that interested in investing a ton of money into it. The biggest thing is technology. If you're going to spend any money, go digital. I know I've seen some practices where they still have paper charts. Go digital, upgrade your technology, upgrade your equipment. So buying that nice new pano or cone beam, or, you know, you might want to invest in that, especially if you're still a few years out from actually selling your practice. So you might be able to, you know, recoup your investment in that. But I say you got to do a little bit of work to make it, to spruce it up a little bit, but you don't have to go overboard, you know? So, and again, that's where having a good advisor comes in. Because I also sell practices too. So I work as sort of a broker / attorney when I sell practices. And that's something that you can ask your advisor about and find out what do I need to do to kind of spruce this up a little bit. So.
And last question, you know, you've already bought this very expensive dental practice and you paid $1 for it, you know, And a lot of people say, well, if you've already spent $1 on a practice, why don't you spend $1.10, $1.15 and sign up with a year-long consulting package so that this big expensive dental office you bought, you'll have a dental office consultant walking you through the first year. And when I think of dental office consultant, I don't know if he's a friend of yours or do you know him? Who's the sexiest man in Minnesota? If it's not Bill Rossi, I don't know who would be that. I mean, do you know when I did a podcast with him, Pornhub blocked it. They just immediately thought it was porno, and it wasn't. Do you know Bill Rossi?
I do know Bill. Yes, absolutely.
So you know, what is the average practice you're selling? What would you say the median average price is? $750?
Oh, probably like 600. Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm going to buy a $600,000 product, I don't know what a 1-year dental office consultant contract are. I'm sure they're anywhere from 25 to 50 grand. If you were going to buy 600, would you think it was a good bet to spend another 25 or 50 on someone like Bill Rossi, to advanced practice manager, to hold your hand through the whole first year? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot.
Or is he a competitor? Or is he a friend? Is he a colleague?
Yeah, no, he's definitely a friend. No, I feel like
is he your sexiest friend?
No, I actually have a few more sexier friends for sure.
Wow.
But I went to law school, you know, lawyers are pretty awesome. So here's my answer to that. I think it depends on how comfortable you feel. So I feel like a lot of buyers, some of them really do need some hand holding. And so in that sense, I think, yes, it's a good idea to at least contact a practice consultant and see if it's a right fit for you. And I know some practice consultants, especially locally, I don't know if Bill does it, but he might, so just ask. But a lot of them, what they'll do is they'll just help you through that first month even, just to get, you know, credentialing done and staff paperwork and kind of get you on your feet a little bit. So I think it's a good idea to at least contact a practice consultant and see if that's something that you want to do, and see if maybe they have, you know, maybe, because the expense I think is probably the biggest thing. It is an expensive thing to do right when you open up, but they might have deals for you where, you know, you only have to pay for a month, or maybe they'll pay by the hour, or something like that. So I know there's some flexibility there, and I think it just depends on if you need that. And some people do, and that's okay. I mean, it's totally okay to need help with that stuff. So but yeah, Bill.
What I've noticed in 32 years is you only know yourself. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know anything above your comprehension. If your mom stayed home and made cookies and your dad was an employee, you probably didn't get a lot of owner operated business knowledge transferred to you. But if you grew up on a farm and your dad was on a tractor while your mom was on the calculator, you know, buying and selling, you know, if your family owned your own business, they don't realize how much more business they know. And then likewise, the person whose dad worked on the line at GM, a lot of those dentists who got A's in math and calculus and physics, you think they're really smart, do not realize their entire 22-year curriculum had no business in it. So I always get red, and then I tell the dental school deans that. I mean, I literally been begging the dean of ASU with success, because when you go into the small towns, like if you go up northern Arizona in small towns, and you know, and you talk to the business owners, and I'll say, well, what is your biggest limit to growth? And a lot of them say, you know, mechanical engineers. You know, I could hire 5 tomorrow. But ASU, they only hire, you know, you can only get in their engineering program. You got a 4.0. So it's always some kid who lives in downtown Phoenix. And then he graduates. He wants to live in downtown Phoenix. He said, then when my guy from my small town applies to engineering school and he only has a 3.2, so he's not good enough to get in. So now we don't have anything. And I always tell the dental school deans that, you know, you always say that no one goes to rural. Well, then don't accept anybody from downtown Minneapolis, St. Paul. If your problem is no one's from small town, then only attract small town. If you want people to go to public health, accept dental students whose parents were employees. But
Something like that, where they encourage you, you get a scholarship if you spend so many years in public health afterwards or something like that. That would be a way to go too. Or rural. I mean,
in the universities, I'm so excited that this pandemic is just going to kill them, because it's an industry that just needed destroyed, because their prices separated from inflation 30 years ago. I mean, you got all these kids, $1.5 trillion in student loans, and you got a tuition that's been growing at twice the rate of inflation my entire life. I mean, these guys are crazy. And what do? They sell out their whole state so they can make the list on U.S. News and World Report as the top 3rd ranked college, because I only going to accept kids that have this on their SAT and this on their GPA. How about this small town needs a hygienist, and I got 2 girls for hygienist. This is a story I used to do back in the day, and I couldn't believe it when it blew up in my face. They'd be in small towns saying, I can't get a hygienist. I said, so go to your local high school, have an essay, why you want to be a dental hygienist, and the winner gets, I mean, the hygiene school is only like $3,000 or $4,000 a year, and and offer her a whole $10,000 scholarship. So they did it. They took my advice, they did it. Then guess what happened? The girls didn't get accepted into hygiene school because they needed to have a 3.8. So I'm like, okay, so this town doesn't have a hygienist. So show me the evidence that a hygienist with a 3.7 GPA cannot do her job in this small town. Because you always are doing things like this dental school graduation board exam. There's zero research that shows how this is an investment, that this sorts out winners from losers, how we have 20 years of history saying, thank God we didn't pass those 20 drunk students from on that board exam, or, so no data to support anything. All I can see is a 20-year list of transactions where all these dental school deans just double down on the raping and the pillaging of dental students until they come out $400,000 in student loans, and even that's not enough for them. They still want more and more and more. So I don't want to go on that dark. It's a dark. Yeah, but the thing that really just pissed me off.
I know. It sucks. And
read their fundraising letters. I mean, basically it's coming from a mob casino, and they're trying to pull it off like their sister Mary Aloysia, trying to raise some money for canned food for a homeless shelter. I mean, it's just the disconnect is so gross. It just, I don't see how you can repair it. So I tell the COVID class of 2020, and I'm sure I shouldn't say this on your podcast with a lawyer, but back in the day when your mom and dad were little, they didn't have endodontist. They had somebody who just said, I'm just going to do endo, practice limited to endo. And then the school said, how can we get in on that? Well, we're going to make it a specialty. Then you have to give us $100,000 a year for 3 more years before you're a board certified endodontist. Well, how about just tell them to take the board certified endodontist and the $300,000 and screw it? And if I was a young girl in graduating class, I do think there's something biological about pediatric dentistry, because I watched it turn almost all women. I mean,
and do it.
I've been in several dental schools where they say these are our 6 pediatric dentist residents, and it's 6 girls. And I lived through this with OBGYN. I grew up with 5 sisters, all men. And I thought it was very, my oldest sister who lives near you, she always would lose it if someone said a hysterectomy, because she would remind you that hysteris was the Greek word for hysterical. And when women come in and complain, they say, oh, she's being hysterical, just a hysterectomy to remove her hysterical organ. And so, but if I want to be a pediatric dentist, I would just graduate and I'd go get a job for a pediatric dentist. And then I would just say, practice limited to pediatric dentistry. And then when someone says, well, you didn't go to a pediatric school and you didn't become a specialist, that's all about the universities. That's their mob shakedown to get $100,000 a year for 3 more years on just abusing the young. I mean, I would just practice limited endo. The greatest endodontist, I think, was, no doubt, it would have been from John McSpadden in Chattanooga, Tennessee, or the guy from Tulsa, Oklahoma that started Tulsa Dental Supply. I mean, these guys are legends. And when they started those companies, there weren't even such thing as endodontists. They just limited endodontics. But I could talk to you for 40 days and 40 nights. So Hillary, so the website is
PineLakeLaw.com.
Pine Lake Law.
Yep.
And is there actually a pine tree near a lake, or is that just all?
It's actually so my husband was joking about when I was going to name my law firm, and he goes, you got to do like a trade name or something. Like, don't name it like Becchetti Law Firm. Like, that's everyone does that. And so it's actually the streets that we live on. It's Pine and Lake. So, and it's Minnesota, so it kind of made sense. So yeah, Pine Lake.
So that must be an extra burden of not only being married, but married to a lawyer. I mean, does he win any?
Oh no, he's a contractor. So even a more beloved profession. So yes, contractor and a lawyer. Yeah. Make a great couple.
Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And I would love to have you write something for Dental Town Magazine or online C-course. Our online C-course, we've had 400 courses, and they've been viewed over 1 million times. And because, I mean, think about it. I've lectured many times at the Minnesota Star of the North meeting. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
But I mean, you gotta shut down your practice for a day. You gotta drive down to the convention. You gotta sit there all day. Versus, I'm just gonna watch it on my iPhone on my couch for 1 hour. And I mean, so online, I don't think that genie's gonna go back in the bottle. I think, I think online. But hey, if you ever want to make us an online course or an article, love to. Thank you so much for spending it with my homies today. I really enjoyed podcasting you, and good luck with those 3 girls.
Thank you so much. Talk to you later. It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.